Hello everyone and a warm welcome. This is our community's first webinar dedicated to the metaverse. My name's Emma and I'm the founder and managing director of Chief Disruptor, formerly known as Nimbus 90. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, we're the community for disruptive business and technology leaders. The Chief Disruptor community believes that disruption is a catalyst for business transformation. As part of our mission to help members make sense of disruptive trends and technologies, we set out to explore with our members what is arguably the greatest, certainly the most hyper-fueled disruptive trend since the launch of the internet itself, the metaverse. The research was led by Caroline Boyd, Head of Research and Strategic Development for our Chief Disruptor community. And Caroline is joining me here today. She's going to share with you the results of our survey and will invite our distinguished panelists to comment and discuss the wider implications of the findings. So just to run through the aims of this morning's session, the first is to understand what the metaverse is and what it means to business and technology leaders. The second, to share the results of our first member survey on the metaverse and to discuss the important implications of the findings for the wider community. And the third, to explore and evaluate use cases for the metaverse or those considering their first steps into the metaverse. We'd like to keep the hour as interactive as possible, so we'll be sharing with you a number of live polls during the session, which we'd love you to take part in, and we'll also allow some time for Q&A at the end. If you do have thoughts or indeed questions during the session, please also feel free to use the function, and we will come to those as quickly as we can at the end. But first, I'd love to introduce you to our panelists for today. Glenn is a strategic digital and business transformational leader. He spent the last 25 years at British Airways and International Airlines Group, creating and leading AIG's Hangar 51 multi-million ventures fund and global accelerator, working with startups and VCs. Glenn was the chairman of the IATA Digital Council and One World Digital Board. Glenn's responsibilities included being AIG's Chief Technology Officer in charge of the group's information technology strategy. Coming to Nora. Nora is the Global Marketing Director at Brand Agency London. She lives and breathes disruptive thinking and brand storytelling, as Nora believes that this is what moves the needle and shift in consumer behavior. And also to Nina, who's the VP for Metaverse Research at Kabuni. Nina is a globally recognized metaverse and tech futurist, an advocate for safe, responsible approaches to integrating the metaverse into our lives. She's the co-founder and VP for Metaverse Research, and they're dedicated to providing the safest space in the metaverse for children aged 8 to 16 to learn, grow, explore within a classroom environment and at home. So welcome to you all. I'd like to come to all of you to find out a little bit more about what interested you and why you joined in the conversation about the metaverse. So coming to you, Glenn, first, what made you interested in the metaverse?
Yeah, so I think actually in your survey you say the metaverse, you know, there's a lot of people have got different definitions of the metaverse. I'd just like to put that the metaverse is sort of like the third wave of the internet. We had the first wave, which was pretty much read only. We had the second wave, which was read write, which is your e-commerce and social networks, and the third wave really is read write own. And it's combining with a bunch of technologies that are coming together that are things from edge computing, AI, data, VR, etc. So they're all coming together, mashing together, and that's creating this new terminology, the metaverse. So I'm very keen on it. I think that if, you know, working with startups for the last 7 years, you know, this is where the VCs are putting their money. They're usually pretty good at spotting those sorts of trends of where growth is going to come from. And so, you know, for me, I think that every business, you know, every individual is going to be a part of the metaverse going forward.
Thank you, Glenn, and for joining us today. To you, Nora, please could you bring it to life? What made it interesting for you? Why did you join it?
Yes, definitely. So actually very similar to Glenn when I started researching and reading more about the metaverse and really seeing the numbers of how much investment in the recent years is going from 2020 to 2022, seeing and reading the reports which says that metaverse by 2030 is going to be a 5 trillion created value, and even more so from 8 to 12 trillion in the economy. You can't ignore the fact that this is just going to become a part of a life. And me working on a free beauty brands and consumer brands, obviously as a marketeer, I have to have a sharp vision of what's coming next and make sure that, you know, we enter at the right time and we present the brands and consumers with an opportunity to engage in our brands in this new space.
Thank you so much. Nina, to you as well.
Yes, thank you, Emma. Just to say it's a pleasure to be here this morning, so thank you. Well, the metaverse, as we've discussed, is the next evolution of technology, and the opportunities and the possibilities that it brings to us are huge. And one of the most exciting things I consider in this next evolution of the technology is the opportunity for us to dance with our pixels, which means that we are no longer confined to our mobile devices or our desktops. We are now stepping into the digital environment, 360 degrees, engaging with technology and synthetic environments and other human beings represented by avatars in digital spaces, which really opens up opportunities to unlock our imaginations, create awe, joy, and wonder, and engage with each other in new and exciting ways. And that's why I'm in the metaverse, as my background is as a psychotherapist, working at the intersection of mental health, culture, self-expression, and creativity, looking at the technology and seeing specifically how we can innovate to elevate people's lives and maybe rectify some of the mistakes we made in the second wave and even the first wave of the internet, and be more intelligent and intentional about how we integrate the metaverse into our lives, not only for children and young people, but as adults as well, creating, you know, well-boundaried use of the technology specifically to engage and inspire. Lots of opportunities.
Thank you, Nina. And I think that makes for a really interesting session today. And thank you all so much. I'm going to hand over to Caroline, who's going to just take us through some of those results. She's responsible for designing the survey and indeed for writing the report. Over to you, Caroline. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Emma. Yes, good morning, everybody, and a big welcome to you all. And a special thank you to all of you who took part in our Making Sense of the Metaverse survey. And today we hope to do just that. So I'll just start our webinar with a little bit of background information on the survey first, if I may. So the survey was completed by 110 senior decision makers across a wide range of job titles, remits, and sectors. And you can see that breakdown in the following two slides now. The largest group of respondents were from digital and strategy remits, followed by innovation. And the three most popular sectors who responded to the survey were technology, financial services, and other professional services. Our research aim was to explore with our members their readiness for the metaverse and their perceptions of how disruptive the metaverse is likely to be in the coming years. We think that results give us a fascinating snapshot of the market overall. And we hope that our findings and the session this morning will get you all thinking about how your organisation might need to adapt or evolve for the metaverse. Which of the following best describes your understanding of the metaverse? As you can see, the highest rated definition of the metaverse, but only at 26%, was a simulated environment facilitated by AR, VR, blockchain, and social media. But we actually offered 8 definitions to choose from, and yet many respondents still chose the other option and came up with their own definition. These included the next iteration of the Internet Web 3. And sorry, as you can see from the results, the highest was the next iteration of the Internet Web 3. So Glenn, you alluded to this already in your introduction, but were you surprised to see that there were so many definitions of the metaverse chosen in our survey?
Not really. I mean, to be fair, you could ask any of the panelists and you'll get a slightly different flavor of what the metaverse means and everything. You know, as I said, you know, in my summary at the opening, I see it as the third wave of the internet. And, you know, it is a bunch of technologies coming together that have been branded under this term metaverse. I think there's a few key differences, which Nina pointed out, which is the fact that, you know, the metaverse is also going to be a bit more immersive and what we would call in the sort of tech side of things, more omni-channel. So it's not just going to be looking in front of your phone or anything like this. You could be walking in the middle of, have your headset, be on the headsets in your own areas. You could be, in a holographic areas. There's a lot of, new rooms that are just built on holographic and everything that are very immersive, or, sort of, at a different range. And both Apple and Google and all of that are working on sort of new technologies alongside Meta and Facebook themselves. So, I think that the term itself is, famous from the sci-fi book Snow Crash, and it sort of sums up all of these technologies coming together and working together, and that shift to creators being able to get direct to consumers, and anybody can be a creator now. Before, you sort of had to go through platforms, and I think this decentralization of creation and sort of being a production. So you create something as an individual, be it your TikTok video, be it whatever, and then you can get it straight to a consumer. I think that this metaverse is going to allow a much greater access to all of those sorts of capabilities.
Absolutely, Glenn. Thank you for that. I think we might be getting our first interactive live poll coming up in a second. Who is driving the metaverse in your organization? Choose one of the following: digital, marketing, IT, HR and training, not yet defined, or other. If everyone could just take a quick second to vote anonymously, and then we can discuss the findings either now or a little bit later, depending how quickly the results come in. Let's have a look. So our highest result at the moment is not yet defined, but our second highest, I might have to put my glasses on at this stage. Yes, so it's looking like digital, followed by IT, followed by marketing. Not yet. Yes, okay. Very interesting. Thank you to everybody for your thoughts on that. Maybe I'm going to ask Nora, could you jump in? Does that make sense to you, that result of that poll?
Yeah, yes, it does. Although in my organization, it was marketing and marketing efforts who really pushed the organization and the brands to explore this space. And it's quite normal because, as a marketeers, we are the trend spotters when it comes to digital development, when it comes to seeing what are the next big things and topics that the industries or marketing overall or our industries. I represent the beauty industries coming in. It really came started with NFTs, non-fungible tokens, and development of those, and a lot of fashion brands started actually jumping on the wagon, and beauty industry was actually the second one to follow. And now we can see this as a spread quite widely, but essentially it's quite normal that it will come from digital efforts and IT efforts through transformation. But interestingly, I think metaverse is one of the subjects that touches many departments in many areas, and it's a really joint responsibility, because it includes, like Nina mentioned before, safety, which is really important, digital safety, identity safety, data safety, whatnot. It also includes a capability from a technology point of view. So IT needs to involve, making sure that we have the right devices to interact, making sure that we write the right speed of internet, the power, and what interact. It also involves marketing and product development. So what unique products we're gonna create for this space, and how uniquely we're gonna interact with these consumers, because it's a very different environment, if you will. So yes, sometimes, I mean, in many cases, the drivers might be, marketing led or IT led, but eventually and essentially, it will be the point where all the departments and all the organization will have to chip in and will have a certain role to do within this environment to make it a really successful experience for the customer or consumer.
Yeah, and Caroline, I'd add to that saying that actually it's really, really important for any sort of larger size businesses to get it to their strategy teams and get it to their board and their management committee. And that's going to take some education, and you've got some, there's great capabilities to be able to show this and do it. But, I have experience getting board members to sit down and actually go into some of these places to just see what's happening, because they're not familiar with it. It is going to affect their business at a strategic level. So, I would suggest the people in digital and marketing and all of that to sort of come together with their strategy teams, get to their management team or their management committee, and then also get to their board and try and get some top-down, cohesive, coherent sort of strategy to bring together, bringing all of those departments, because I think Nora said it right. It's all of the departments that will get involved.
That's great. Thanks so much for that, Glenn. I'm going to move on to question 2, if that's okay. So we asked, what is the main reason you're interested in learning about the metaverse? 36% of respondents indicated that their main reason for wanting to learn about the metaverse was to separate hype from reality, with a further 26% wanting to develop a metaverse strategy, which alludes to what you were just saying there, Glenn, about strategy. Focusing on the first statistic, much of the early media interest in the metaverse has been driven by high-profile celebrity brand tie-ups, and some might argue that they were little more than marketing stunts. Then eye-watering tech acquisitions by big names such as Meta, Microsoft, and Apple have also grabbed all the headlines and maybe fueling the hype. The fact that there's little consensus about what the metaverse actually is, alongside the evolving nature of the metaverse, creates a perfect storm for business leaders, doesn't it, when they're trying to make sense of the metaverse. So for our panelists, what would you say to those members here today that are perhaps feeling a little bit skeptical or hesitant about the metaverse? So Nina, please, can I come to you first?
Well, for those of us who feel skeptical or hesitant or resonant about the future of technology and the prospect of the metaverse is, not only is there billions, if not trillions, projected to be as an economy, and the amount that's being invested into it in the last 12 to 18 months alone, the metaverse is coming and it will change our lives. How exactly is yet to unfold. There's a lot of prediction, there's a lot of thesis, but it is a technology that will be integrating into our lives in effective ways. And so, if your tendency is to bury your head in the sand and look the other way, what I would advise is that we consider that this technology is coming, and the more that you get involved in its design and the shaping of it today, the more it will be fit for purpose in the future. And I think it's really important to discuss access and equitability and diversity when we talk about designing this next phase of technology, because it will be impacting society on political levels, on all aspects of a society, on a national level and an international level. So if you can be a part of the metaverse, well, indeed, we are already a part of the metaverse, because every digital interaction that we have today, every click that you make, every purchase you make, that data is being used to shape the future of the metaverse. And so I invite people to become more conscious about their digital interactions and show the AI and the machine learning the good parts of humanity, because currently it doesn't see the best of us. And unfortunately, that means that the metaverse is going to be shaped in a particular way and expect us to behave in particular ways based on how we engage digitally right now. So I would invite people to become more responsible and conscious about their digital choices in consideration of the next iteration of the internet, the metaverse, not only for us, but also for younger generations who will truly be the next generation of children who integrate this into their lives and truly use the metaverse in its more towards full fruition of what the metaverse will be.
Moving on to the second statistic, the cosmetics and fashion industry have been very early adopters of the metaverse, and your brands have both leveraged the opportunities of the metaverse. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've done and how did you go about developing your metaverse strategy?
Absolutely. So we started with, as I briefly mentioned, with NFTs, because that was, I would say, probably for many brands within consumer goods industry, fashion and beauty in particularly, the first step into the metaverse. So we developed a collection of NFTs in a celebration of our new collection launch with Christine Quinn for the brand Seattle London, and we launched it with the platform which was compatible with both cryptocurrency and our usual currency, just to dilute the barrier of entries, and which sold out in less than 12 hours. So that was more of a celebratory activity versus and just tapping into the area and first step into the metaverse. And then beginning of the year, we further developed and entered metaverse through Decentraland platform, where we had the first ever launch event and the first ever proms party, obviously for our younger audience and members of the metaverse community. So really, these were the several experiences and early steps for us within the metaverse. And probably the biggest sort of potential we saw within the space was the fact that it really helps and dilutes the borderline. So wherever you are, in whatever physical location you are able to access, and this accessibility, regardless of the time, regardless of the location, is phenomenal. Where you are trying to arrange an event, rent a space for a limited time and amount in a certain location, certain time, here you're open to across all the time zones, all the geographical locations, and really give access and ability for people to interact with your brand and to look to deliver the look and feel of a brand in a very different element, which you would never be able to, or you would be limited to a certain time and certain location. So that is, for me, probably the biggest value added to anything that metaverse can offer, is really diluting and completely opening it up through multiple time zones, geographical locations, and experiences which probably in physical location you would not be able to add. For example, branded POAPs which your avatar can wear, which would signify a certain, say, apparel, fashion apparel, attribute, or a certain makeup looks. And your avatars can have them branded in their wallets, and whenever we're interacting within a metaverse at different locations, they can use it, which can be accessible and which can be, collected as a collectible. So there's lots of opportunities and which brands can brand, if you will, but also can deliver a sort of point of interaction, which, as I mentioned before, it's in a different way than the real life experiences.
That's fascinating. Thank you so much for your perspective on that. So we asked our members, how would you rate the disruptive potential of the metaverse for your business? I think you can see from the slide that 34% of respondents said that they believe the metaverse will be disruptive to their business, and a total of 69% stated that it will be disruptive or slightly disruptive. Obviously, the speed and the impact of this disruption will naturally vary across industry sectors, but I think retailers in particular, as we've just heard, are already experimenting with the metaverse and providing disruptive, immersive customer experiences. The luxury fashion industry, as we know, has already experienced significant disruption to its business model. I think most of us have heard of Metaverse Fashion Week, which was recently hosted on the platform Decentraland. Other sectors are now rapidly following suit, including even the most risk-averse sector, financial services. And simulations in a virtual environment are creating a really powerful business case for manufacturing and for corporate training environments. So a question for all our panelists, but I'm going to start with you, Glenn, if you're okay with that. how would you rate the disruptive, I think I already know the answer to this, I know what you're going to say, Glenn, how would you rate the disruptive potential of the metaverse, please?
I think that any business that's not thinking about it at the moment is probably, you know, I look at that graph there and I think, actually, what was the age demographic of the individuals feeding into that and versus the age demographic of their customer base? You know, some of the most successful, I mean, there is customers, there is businesses today making lots of money out of it. And, you know, part of this whole metaverse side of things is things like, you know, video commerce. You know, one individual in China sold $1.2 billion, $1.2 billion. So I'm not getting that wrong, not million, billion, in 12 hours on the metaverse. Yeah, live products. This is, you know, this is stuff that will hit sort of Western Europe and the West, you know, fairly soon with this video commerce and stuff. One of the things that Nora was talking about, which is something that people haven't probably clocked, is that the individuals start to own the assets within this. So, you know, for example, you know, I have an avatar and people have avatars. Now, if you can go on to today's traditional Web 2 platforms, you would just take your avatar into, you know, you'd go in there and your whatever there's an avatar you put up on the graphic and that's it. You can't take that anywhere else. Yeah, you have to recreate it on another platform. In the metaverse, you know, I have an avatar with Ready Player Me. I can take that avatar across a whole range of different environments, different, you know, universes, if you want to call it. You know, I can go to an art gallery, you know, in New York. I can play a game in Decentraland. I can go down into Next Earth and buy some property. You know, I can go into some gaming, you know, play Axie Infinity. And I can take my avatar and the assets that I've bought. You know, today it might be fashion accessories because I want to look good in the metaverse. So, you know, I may want to wear, you know, a certain brand or take a certain handbag or the things. But, you know, I think that, you know, your identity will be, your identity can change in the metaverse. And so, you know, there's all of those sorts of things. And I think Nina's probably far more eloquent about it, talking about that. But there's some real big challenges that are going to come from this. But, you know, in terms of businesses, you know, even traditional, you know, airlines, which is my background, you know, they're already working in the metaverse. You know, there is at least a dozen, you know, airlines that are seen as traditional, legacy, old, slow, fat businesses, you know, working in the metaverse and actually making money. There's things like loyalty, payments, finance, settlement. I've just come back from Doha. We were talking about, you know, there's $340 billion worth of settlement going across the settlement channels. And it's looking to move into essentially the metaverse. It'll be on a decentralized finance or a refi, as they call it, you know, in the more better terms. So there is no doubt. It's not about if it will be disruptive, it's when, and, you know, when it's going to start to hit people's balance sheets. And it might be the companies that you don't expect.
That was a great answer. Thank you very much, Glenn. So this is our second poll. Again, just to remind you guys that it is anonymous. If you could take a second to respond to this one, it's what is likely to be your next step into the metaverse? Choose one from the following: evaluating our internal capabilities, building a business case, identifying use cases, use the glasses again, just get started with a metaverse experiment, and identifying key external technology partners who can assist us. So that is what is likely to be your next step, or maybe it's your first step into the metaverse. So if you wouldn't mind selecting one of the following, and then we can have a look and see what the results of that question is. The top answer we have is identifying use cases So I hope we can, I mean, we've already done a little bit of that this morning, and hopefully we can do a wee bit more of that in our discussions. We've also got, second one looks like getting started with the metaverse experiments. So some of our attendees today are going to be getting cracking on an experiment soon, which is very promising. And hopefully you'll come back and be our panelists in future webinars and share your experiences. So that's brilliant. And then we have the third one was evaluating our internal capabilities, which is obviously absolutely crucial, isn't it? Nora, you're nodding your head like mad when I say that, and evaluating your internal capabilities. So anything you want to add to the discussion around that question?
I just reflecting on the previous comment Glenn said as well, I think the really winners in this in early adoption of metaverse are really the small and indie businesses and brands, because we are like ourselves, for example, we jumped right in without really having a lot of board members to convince why it's important, really without having the fear of doing something wrong in our shares and IPOs going down, etc. So I think indie brands in this moment really has a massive advantage, getting in there really quickly, understanding, making mistakes, learning from mistakes, adapting, and being really swift, because we are agile businesses and we're nimble businesses. And if something goes not entirely based on the plan, that's okay. We're going to do it the next time, and we're going to do the better. And for us, equally, learning about metaverse came from trial and error process. Oh, maybe next time we should prolong it for a longer. Maybe we should do this in a different way. Maybe we should actually think about social mechanism and social sharing about this element. So just thinking about that, it's really hard, and it's going to be really disruptive for a big businesses to implement and be agile and be the first adopters of metaverse, because there is just multiple layers which will need shifting, and it's essentially a massive change making, which will need to go through organizations. But for small and privately owned businesses, this is a great opportunity to really jump in and try and see what works, and kind of establish a footprint, if you will, because the more we talk about metaverse, the faster the bigger organizations will start moving. The cost of entry is just going to increase, and then you're going to be competing with with the big amazingly looking setups in metaverse, which can cost a lot of money. And now I think you can enter the metaverse with relatively low cost, entry cost, if you will, and with your even internal capabilities, which we did essentially. But the longer we wait, the more players we're going to have, which is essentially everyone, I think, agrees that that's the future of the economy and of a digital transformation for all of us. It's just gonna be harder and harder and more expensive at the same time.
So we asked our members, how prepared is your organisation for the metaverse? 49% of our respondents reported that they're not prepared at all for the metaverse, although it's probably fair to say that it's very difficult to prepare for something if you don't know what it actually is going to look like. That said, there are steps businesses can take now to explore this opportunity and to mitigate the risks as the metaverse continues to evolve. Central to this will be considering the capabilities that you have in-house to enable that you enter the metaverse securely and safely. Businesses may need to acquire experts with new or different skills to those already in-house, such as experience in animation, VR, or graphic design skills. Nina, you are building your own virtual world. What technology expertise and partners have you built in order to support this?
Yeah, it is an emerging field and industry. And so there are a lot of pieces of the puzzle that need to continue to develop. And so right now, as an industry, in terms of building a platform, it does take key partners and collaborations to bring that to life. And even the biggest technology organizations are struggling to put this and to make this a compelling place for people to spend their times. And that truly is the real key to the future of the metaverse is, do people want to spend their time there, or how do they want to spend their time there? So essentially it's about understanding human behavior and how this shifting and the evolving of the technology, both the hardware and the software components and the content that's being developed in the creator economy that Web3 and the metaverse promises. It's about understanding how humans are going to be behaving together and how they can and how they're empowered as individuals and families and communities and societies. And I believe if we can kind of begin to understand your own customer, your own, the individuals and how they will connect on an emotional level to how they're going to use the technology and predict that, then I think there's a strategy that's implementable and has some possible success to it. If we're coming from this as a kind of an outside in approach without an inside understanding of how people are using the technology, who's using it right now, why they're using it, then we're going to be missing the point and missing the boat on authentic opportunities to connect with your customers. And if there's a disconnect there, people are going to know. And so that's really important that you come at this with an authentic approach and find the right partners in collaboration to bring that to life and serve your customer in the best possible way, in the capacity that you can right now. And always know that this is very iterative. It's very much evolving on a daily basis. And that's a part of the excitement. And that's what customers want to take part of. They want to be involved in the creation process right now and shape the future of the metaverse with you. And I think that's really important to understand the authenticity aspect of this.
And I love the idea of what you said, Nina, about your customers really wanting to be involved in shaping that process as well, which is, it's really exciting, actually.
Yeah, and the essence of Web3 is the vision of empowering individuals to create opportunities for themselves and to connect with their communities and grow. And that's really deep down the essence of every human interaction, why we have designed technology, and that just continues, but in a really, a big shift that's coming. And some of us have a hard time kind of grappling that in our minds. Is this real? Is this not? Is it just a fantasy? But it is really just human beings expressing themselves with technology, and you've got to capture that. You've got to find it. And as a business, I think that's the true success, is how do people want to use this technology, and how can I support them, and how can I be involved?
Anybody want to jump in there?
Yeah, I mean, I'd back up a lot of what Nina just said, but I think, I think actually the smaller businesses have got a better opportunities than the bigger businesses, right? Because they can experiment and try things. I would reach out to all of the sort of businesses on the call and say, do some experiments, find some good agencies and tech people, bring them together and do some small experiments, without risking the whole brand and all of those sorts of things. You can do these experiments without even putting your brand to it. So do try and understand. I do think that one thing that hasn't been talked about today is the crossover, though, between the metaverse and the real world. Right, and some of the most successful metaverse sort of value creation and all of those sorts of things are businesses that are giving what we call real world utility. So what's in it, and I can talk. I spoke to a head of digital in a fashion business. I won't name the fashion business, but a fairly significant fashion business, and they were very sort of skeptical about this. They were skeptical about the whole crypto space and the Web3 space and everything. And I said, yeah, but what's the demographic age of your customers? And actually they were at the end of the buying cycle of their lives and everything like this, and they weren't bringing in new customers. They just weren't cool, right? Their brand was very much, you're serving this market, not the new market, and they had a core strategy to get into the new market. And I said, well, you need to experiment there. I think they were very shocked with the little trial that they did, which was basically, they created a asset in the metaverse. So they created a product that they could sell in the metaverse. but that product had real world utility. So it was linked to a real product in a shop, right, in a physical place. And then they started seeing young people come into their shops that would have never come into their shops with essentially a token or a voucher or a typically a QR code in this situation, and being able to get discount on real world product. So that's the link between, from a strategy, and that's why I said at the beginning, link it to your strategy, because you've got to start to work out how do you create value for your consumer and how do you create value for the company at the same time, and try and link them together. So most of the really successful sort of NFTs or the sides of things that are out there have real world utility. Think of it in terms of loyalty, airlines and loyalty. Does this give me a seat upgrade if I'm doing something in the metaverse? How many people will start to engage in that, if they know that there's real world utility off the back end of it. So I think that test and learn, but you are going to a decentralized world. So I think what Nina said there is probably some of your best creators are probably not going to come from inside your organization. They're going to come from your super fans and the community of consumers that love your brand. So get them involved.
That's a fantastic answer as well. Thank you so much for that, Glenn. Question 5, we asked, what do you see as the main opportunity for entering the metaverse? 41% of respondents report that the main opportunity for entering the metaverse is to build more immersive experiences. And I guess it makes sense that as people spend more time online and in the metaverse, brands are going to have to meet consumers there, aren't they? And once they're in, it's easy to imagine why they might find this immersive VR, AR space such an engaging environment just to hang out in and shop via virtual storefronts. But it's probably not just the gamified graphics and design that pull consumers in and keep them there. It'll also be due to the high level of personalization, which allows users to create more customized experiences in the end. So Nora, for brands looking to engage and interact with customers in new ways, what opportunities does the metaverse present?
It's really, as we already briefly spoke. So I think, well, when developing and outlining the strategies, what added value your presence in the metaverse will create for your customers. Essentially, all of us who work for brands want the customers and consumers to fall in love with your brand, and that's through delivering smooth and memorable experiences, being it offline, being it online. That's the highest level of loyalty and highest level of building the connections with consumers, which will make them essentially to come back to your brand, be it services or be that goods, from my perspective. So, the use nowadays of metaverse, we've seen is limited, but it's limitless in the near future, because more and more industries are going just to get involved. I think the one which we know the best is gaming through Roblox, and that's the third industry and category which really entered the metaverse. We've seen the entertainment following through Roblox as well, and organizing concerts and experiences, that sort of experiences. But essentially, it will have probably a separate space within the metaverse. So all the possible entertainment, be it sport, be it concerts, be it art, and imagine and attending Art Basel Miami through your own kitchen, whatnot, in London, if you will. But then also the whole education sector and healthcare sector. So imagine being a surgery student and doing the practices with the help of metaverse of heart surgeries. Imagine taking a limited number of driving license tests or lessons in the use of metaverse with the help of metaverse. It's really some companies actually have already started and tipped their toe into the whole HR and training within the employment sort of area within the metaverse. So the uses and the opportunities and entering metaverse are like really endless. But the fact and the key question is, how do we create value, added value? Whether, like Glenn mentioned, is it through loyalty programs or whatnot, right? So what is the value added proposition for the consumer which enters into the metaverse, interacts with your brand? And secondly, how can you make consumer through the experience you provide fall in love with your brand, that he or she comes back to utilize and use the services and or goods, essentially. So these are the kind of few aspects I see as the opportunity entering the metaverse for businesses. And the use is limitless, really, regardless if you are in financial services, in consumer goods and fashion, or in NGO sector.
Nora, that's really interesting. But to widen this out to Glenn and to Nina, we've talked a lot about some of the luxury brands and the marketing opportunities. Bringing Nina and Glenn into the conversation again, what do you think it can mean to some of the other industries that we probably haven't really looked at today? So pharmaceutical, manufacturing. I'm sure quite a few of the people watching us now are coming from some different sectors. So Glenn, Nina, could I bring you in just to share with us what you think it might mean to some of these other industries? Glenn, should I start with you, and then we can go to Nina as well, if that's okay. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hear what Nina has to say on this, because I think she's probably got some other areas. But education's huge, right? And certain people learn in different ways, and so visual learning is actually something that the metaverse is just going to be fantastic. Look at a 1D or a 2D piece of paper, and look at the universe, or stand in the middle of it and zoom into Saturn or Mars, or it is just a completely different experience. So I think education's huge. It's interesting, the UAE government, so in Dubai in the Middle East, this week already has opened up its government departments on the metaverse. So the concept of doing your driving licenses, those sorts of things. I think there's a huge opportunity with sort of remote learning, so in businesses, so all qualified high-end engineering type functions or medical functions being supporting maybe there's a specialist doctor in New York that is world-renowned, well-qualified, will be able to jump on the metaverse and assist an operation in London or in India or in wherever in the globe. And those are real world impactful, meaningful things. I think also with the COVID showing home working is a thing. Lots, it's not going, I don't think many businesses have gone back to normal. But the fact of having communities where people can interact and learn how to interact, and hopefully that's my segue to Nina, is to sort of, I've got a single child. We live out in the country. Lockdown, he had to be on the metaverse in order to socialize with his friends, right? It's, you have to allow them to do that, because otherwise, he was just going to be completely socializing with adults and not with his own age group. And that raises a whole range of challenges, but I think that there is places that are safe and capable of doing that, and I think we'll see more and more of that going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, education has huge potential when it comes to the application of metaverse or Web3 technologies in the capacity of delivering a high quality education to remote areas. So access is one of the biggest opportunities. And also, one of the things the pandemic taught us is that education from, K to gray, lifelong learning is really not harnessing the power of technology. And what we learned over the pandemic is that it's entirely possible to learn and grow and explore new information via technology. And we're now more willing to do that. And so this next evolution of technology brings us opportunities to innovate specifically for pedagogical approaches and putting the technology into the hands of educators and parents and everyone today, and understand how they can use it, again, specifically to improve their skills, their job functions. And there's a lot of opportunity there. Putting education aside, of course, which I'm a huge proponent for the use of technology within it, and caveat that with the safe, responsible development of technology in order to keep our children safe in the context of online harms, which is entirely possible and not the technology's fault. It's how it's been developed. But not to go off on a tangent on that today, maybe we could have another conversation about safe, responsible development of the metaverse. But, what's some of the most amazing things coming out of metaverse technologies right now? There were in South America conjoined twins who surgeons rehearsed the surgery at remote locations and were able to practice it and get it wrong and fail and try again. And so when they went to in virtual reality, and so when they went and came together in the hospital to do the surgery, it was delivered expertly and near perfectly. And I think the opportunity that technology brings us to be able to learn, to iterate, to adapt, and trial and error aspects of manufacturing, of industry. I know a team of academics are working on nuclear chemical experiments through VR and through immersive technology. And then, there's huge capacities in the context of blockchain, which doesn't have to necessarily come together with immersive technology or virtual reality or augmented. So how can we shift the decentralized approach to information through the blockchain? What does decentralized financial systems and models allow us to create for societies and uplift struggling economies, et cetera? There's a huge amount of possibilities. And it really is down to the human beings, the organizations, the businesses that are looking at it strategically, how they can use it to not only support their businesses, but how to support society around them as well.
Yeah, and I think that goes to one of the questions as well that was on the chat there. There's this concept that the metaverse is going to create a have and a have-nots. But actually, if you look at the growth of the metaverse, it's actually coming from some of those more poorer countries, those poorer demographics. If you take something like Axie Infinity, which is most games you play and you pay, i.e. you pay to play them, or they're there. If anyone that's got a child will know this with things like Fortnite and other games. However, Axie Infinity is you play to earn. You earn money from playing, and that's a complete flip of the business model. Right, and so Axie Infinity is its biggest consumers from the Philippines, from a much lower social demographic. They're actually making a living off playing games, right? And so and Nina mentioned the sort of DeFi or the refi side of world. It's bringing millions of people that currently are not banked into banking and into financial vehicles that they probably not had access. Now, it doesn't have to be a full immersive, VR and AR and lots of good graphics. It could be on a old Nokia phone, and they're participating in the metaverse, you being able to be banked, have a bank, sell their products. As I said, there's in China, the local farmer has got his phone on a stick and he's going, right, I've got these products here I've just grown out of my garden, and he's selling them live into the metaverse, right? So I think that business models are going to change. They are changing, and it's going to be not just one end of it. It's not just going to be for an elite few over here that can afford the technology. It's actually going to be for all, and that's the exciting part of it.
Yeah, and just to add to that, with the conflict in Ukraine, the centralized banks weren't able to make transactions, so people were relying on cryptocurrencies, as well as the military service of Ukraine raised funds through NFTs. And it's the simple applications like that, which is quite revolutionary and in a time of crisis. But when necessary, the technology is there and really did support the country to take actions as they felt necessary. And that's just one small example of the blockchain case studies and the cryptocurrency case studies that are potentially could change the way that we function.
I think what we're really seeing this morning from you all is just the art of the possible. And it is really, really optimistic, isn't it? It's really exciting. I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to keep things moving forward. And I just want to thank everybody again for all the questions and comments that are coming in. We are going to come to those, I promise. What is your biggest concern about the metaverse? 22% of respondents responded that privacy and security are their greatest concerns about the metaverse. I think we'll agree that, as with the evolution of the internet, which I think started out as a bastion of freedom of expression, and then pretty much turned into privacy, security minefield. I think with the metaverse, leaders are just going to have to balance the user experience with protecting the privacy of individuals and the security of businesses. And one of the most concerning issues may be the average age of early adopters, as gaming is a natural entry point to the metaverse, and it sort of follows that children and young adults are going to be interacting with others on the metaverse. So I think everybody will agree, parents and those who aren't parents, identity and age appropriate access are going to be of particular concern to businesses. Nina, much of the research and work that you've been doing is in this area. So what are the privacy, security and ethical challenges that are specific to the metaverse?
Well, again, this could take an entire series of webinars, but there are significant concerns in privacy and security issues, especially as we consider the current state of Web 2 and the online harms that we're exposed to for our children, as well as for privacy and security issues as adults and businesses as well. There's data questions across the board, and it's going to take a lot of work across aspects of society to really begin to understand how best to regulate and create policy for the metaverse. And there are frameworks in place. There is a sense that we're in the Wild West, but it is starting to unfold. There are a lot of really good conversations at a global level starting to happen on how to keep people safe in the metaverse from a psychological and physiological standpoint, and also from a cybersecurity sense of it all. One of the key things that we haven't addressed today is also the issue of biometric data, which is now accessible quite readily within the context of the hardware and the associated wearables as the technology evolves and becomes more kind of streamlined to the human body, is our biometric data. And that's a really key area of concern around identifying our eye tracking, our facial recognition, which will help design the technology to be more real and make it a more compelling place for us to spend our time in. But it's also data that it can be harvested and manipulated against us. And so there's some real questions about who owns that data and how are we going to navigate this in the next forever, really.
Yeah, and I'd like to add to what Nina's saying there, because I actually challenge some of this, because the Web 2 created a lot of this, and it's not surprising that it's coming out high in the results. However, as we move into this Web 3 and this metaverse space, it is much more secure, believe it or not. And and people will roll their eyes at me, but today a lot of the systems on Web 2 you interact with are what I would call a black box. You really don't know what's happening with your data. So, on Facebook or in Amazon, on Alexa, those sorts of things. However, the Web 3 is a glass box, not a black box, i.e. everything is transparent, right? So I'm not saying that the privacy and security issues will go away, because they're always going to be there. However, I think that actually in the Web3 technologies, they are more secure, they are more transparent, and you know, you'll see a lot of this. I mean, we've been working in, you know, the worst crisis in terms of COVID, and having to create, you know, quite sensitive customer data about their health in order for them to travel. You know, so we went to a technology called self-sovereign ID, right? It's not the airline that owns the data. It's not even the government that owns the data. It is the individual that is owning the data. Now, actually, that brings me different concerns, is because a lot of individuals probably don't know how to manage their own data. So, you know, there's this word custodial or non-custodial type of approach. And I think most people are used to sort of a custodial approach. The banks will look after my bits and my security and everything like that. In this world, you're going to move more to a non-custodial. So there's probably going to be some challenges around this. How do people look after their own data? So, you know, it's fairly nascent. But as I said, you know, I firmly believe that, you know, you will have your own data. You will take your data where you want to go, and it will be associated with you. And the technology is getting better and better all the time. But I think it's actually going to be safer and provide more privacy than what the Web 2 does today.
I think we probably could go on about this all day, couldn't we? And we may have to run another session specifically on this. So watch this space. I think we are probably getting to the end of the sessions. We want to get to people's questions on the chat poll, if that's okay. So I'm just gonna open some of these chat questions, and well, thank you so much to everyone who said thank you, that they needed to head off. That's very sweet. And thank you for joining us. Let's go back up. Here we go. This is a good one. You mentioned the metaverse can help share knowledge. How can it help create and grow knowledge? Nina. Oh, sorry, let me just read the second half of this in case it's a separate question. It says, every time we use compute, move information or store data, we consume carbon. What is the carbon footprint of the metaverse? Is it worth it? What a good question. It's quite a difficult one to answer. Nina.
Well, I mean, those are two separate questions. I think, you know, the evolution of the internet, Web 1 gave us access to information. Web 2 developed, you know, the monetization of transactions of information, and now we're into Web 3, where we will continue to see evolution of access to information in the metaverse. It will take different forms, and it will be decentralized in formats that allow different people to share different information, and you know, that's yet to unfold. We'll see, but. You know, the second question about, you know, the environmental footprint of the metaverse. Again, there are some, you know, the cost to mint an NFT, you know, all the servers required to make this kind of constantly running metaverse. There's a lot of questions about that, but it's certainly not something that we aren't able to solve. And I think that there's a lot of brilliant minds out there working on solving these problems, and the pros and cons will always need to be, you know, weighed up and considered, and people hopefully will, and organizations and business and tech companies will make responsible decisions. And I think we're a place in society where people are continually demanding more conscious environmental aspects and values, that this will be able to cohesively move in parallel, you know, our environmental and climate problem and our technology solutions to support it.
And one of the biggest players in the metaverse, Ethereum, last week went through, well, a couple of weeks ago, went through what they call the merge, which moved from proof of work, which was very compute intensive, to proof of stake. And that dropped the energy consumptions by 99.5%. down. So yeah, I totally agree that they're very, very solvable. Most big data centers, so the big data centers are now net zero already. So, you know, Amazons and Azures and everything, they're very conscious about this. You know, they're actually generating most of the energy off hydro or off solar to drive the data centers. But it's a constant battle to be green throughout the whole concept, you know, because it goes right to the edge, you know, the consumerization of, you know, change your mobile every year and throw it into the sort of, you know, pit. I think that there's a whole range of challenges that consumers will actually help drive corporates, and corporates, it's now, you know, probably, you know, a third or fourth item on the board agenda is to talk about, you know, ESG topics such as social, you know, the green agenda, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's going to be solved. It's not fully solved, but, you know, in some aspects, you know, fast fashion is probably better in the metaverse than in the real world, right? So, you know, you could make an argument on both sides of the case.
I just want to add, you know, we keep calling the metaverse versus the real world. And I just like to suggest that we consider that the metaverse is the real world as well. Just putting that out there, because if we continually have this divide of the real world versus the virtual world, then we won't see this point of cohesion. And we'll also constantly be creating a divide that allows us to kind of, you know, differentiate the two worlds. But, you know,
that is,
yeah.
Yeah, I it's a brilliant point that Nina's just made there, because, you know, so one of the things that I did the other day is, you know, just have to think quickly about how many screens you've looked at today, and you know, most people go, oh, 1, 2, you know, well, we've probably got about 6 or 7 screens that we're all already looking at just where we are at the moment. Digital and the metaverse is unconscious. It's like blinking and breathing, yet most businesses talk about the metaverse or digital as a conscious decision, you know, oh, do we want to do this? Should I have a cup of coffee type? So this is thinking fast and thinking slow. And I'm sure Nina could talk about the psychology of this, but actually, you know, the metaverse and digital are unconscious. Consumers don't think about it, yet businesses treat it as a decision that needs to be made. And that just doesn't make sense to me. And I think that, you know, a lot of businesses, and I said this to our board, and you could see a bunch of board members, light bulbs go on going, oh, I hadn't really thought of it that way, right? So it was a great point that Nina made.
Guys, we've got quite a few other questions here, and I'm loving this. This is brilliant. And this question I want to ask you is because it's something that really fascinates me, and it fascinates us at Chief Disruptor. We talk about this idea of disruptive mindsets in our business, and how you change thinking. So this leads into a question that I love here, and thank you for this question. Before we get to technical skills, in an established large organization, we need people to think differently and to imagine different ways of doing things. Has the panel got any experience of changing the thinking in their organizations? Who am I going to? Nora, we haven't heard from you for a while. Nora, do you want to jump in? Or would you jump in, anybody who wants to jump, who feels comfortable with this one?
A very valid question, because it's a big change management topic, I guess, for large organizations where there's a lot of stakeholders involved, and when the brand protection is and brand values in particular protection, you know, for, as I mentioned, for small and indie businesses and privately owned business, we are much more prompt to risk taking, and making mistakes, you know, and disrupting is kind of embedded in our thinking and in our in the way we act, because we will never be able to compete with the big businesses, big budgets, and big power they might have. So it's really, I guess, all starts about education. And I like the point which Glenn made before, and I said that as well, just getting and experiencing on a small scale and small level, and getting everyone involved. There's so much information at the moment available through various reports, like Chief Disruptor report, which you recently published, is great. Getting everyone involved and on board, and getting the thinking. There's tons of reports with consultancy groups like McKinsey's of this world and Citibank of this world or whatnot, which talks about various use of the metaverse and actually where it's heading to and what numbers and economy and added value we foresee in the future. So starting it's a change management essentially. So getting everyone on board and starting from educational piece of the for the business key stakeholders to actually going into the space and experimenting on the smaller scale and smaller level and understanding how this potentially could work, and then having a whole change strategy sort of outline of how this is going to be implemented, from trainings and what that means, what additional capabilities potentially we need to outsource and what can be utilized. It's just like it was quite a few years ago when we entered into the social media space, when everyone didn't know how this is all going to happen. And now we have all the knowledges of potential threats. I believe, there's threats we probably are not aware right now still, which comes with metaverse because it's just so new and it's evolving. It's not a finished product. It's being built all the time. So it's just managing this as any change management process within the organization, starting with education, bringing everyone on board, looking at the competitor landscape and industries which are already embedding it quite successfully, and experimenting at a smaller scale and before moving to a large scale. That's sort of a map I could advise on.
Thank you, Nora, so much indeed. I know we could cover a lot more today, and indeed in a lot more questions and comments, but a big thank you to everybody. Lots has been covered, as we know, and a big thank you to Caroline for hosting for us everything from the opportunities across industries, whatever your size of organization, to positively empowering individuals through technology. What about the data ownership and the associated challenges? The importance of just starting to experiment, as Nora's just saying there, that connection of the metaverse and the real world, as Nina was talking about, creating added value for your community of customers and your business at the same time, something Glenn really focused on. And ultimately, as we move into more of a decentralized world, how do we look at safe, responsible development for everyone? So a huge thank you to Nora, Nina and Glenn. So many incredible insights and viewpoints this morning. And indeed to all our members who have tuned in today for your questions and your comments. Huge thank you to Caroline and to our entire team at Chief Disruptor for all of your hard work and commitment in bringing our first Metaverse report and webinar to life. There are a number of other ways that we are connecting members to enable them to connect with one another, learn and disrupt. And you can find a number of these at chiefdisruptor.com, reports, events, our Chief Disruptor podcast, amongst many other things. But in the meantime, a huge thank you to all of you today. Enjoy the start or continuation of your metaverse journey, and we look forward to helping you and your teams along the way.